Are you in London? Is that where you're at today?
I am actually. I haven't usually been there during all the lockdown. I was up in the north of England, but I'd come down. We did a concert in a cave last week, and I'm down to mix the audio on that.
Well, you mentioned music in a cave on the new record, so it made sense, right, to play in a cave?
It's exactly the same cave. Yeah, we played a concert there in April 2018, and that's where we recorded the basic tracks for Must I Evolve and Sometimes I'm Pharaoh that are on the record. So we would normally be touring now, but we can't. So we went back in there and did the whole record in order, and that's going to be on YouTube next Tuesday, I think.
Well, we're all dealing with such different times, and what do you do now? How do you put out a record, and how do you promote a record? It must be a total challenge for you.
Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, especially a record like this where it was worked up live. The songs were semi-finished, and then we finished them off by playing them to people, and then parts of the record were recorded live as well. So it was all about an interaction with an audience. That's really what finished the songs off. So then It's kind of weird that we can't actually go out and play them to people anymore.
It's The Current. I'm Jim McGuinn. We have Jarvis Cocker joining us today from London, and I have this preamble of all things that I'm not prepared to ask you about, but it sort of sets up who is Jarvis Cocker. So let me see if I can get this straight. Lead singer on and off for 30 years for the band Pulp. Probably the only person I'll meet today that has bum rushed Michael Jackson at an award show, played a Hogwarts school dance in a glam rock all-star band, collaborated with Nancy Sinatra and Charlotte Gainsbourg, booked Motorhead and Rocky Erickson to play a festival, had a song covered by William Shatner, was animated by Wes Anderson, TV host, DJ, writer, editor, video director, father, raconteur, Jarvis. Great to meet you.
Well, thanks. That makes me feel like I should have a lie down and a rest.
Well, I was actually explaining to my wife sort of what you've done besides being in Pulp, and she said, "Oh, he's a real Renaissance man." And would you consider yourself a Renaissance man of the age?
Well, it's nice to think that. I don't know. I mean, that's partly what making this record has made clear to me. I think that fundamentally I am a songwriter, and that in so much as that's how I make sense of my life. I mean, that's what I've got to. If I listen to a record from 10 years ago, that will tell me where my head was at 10 years ago,
Yeah.
And nothing else really does that. I do a bit of writing and all the other things that you mentioned, and I enjoy them. But the thing that's nearest to my heart, I guess, is songwriting.
It's been, though, 10 or 11 years since you had a record under your name. You've done a lot of collaborating in that time. So is there something about leaving and coming back that really helps you refresh your writing or changes you?
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think that. I'm always kind of jealous of people who are on like their 30th album, and I think, I should be like that. Why can't I have made that many albums? But you have to kind of accept the way that you are. And I think that for me, it takes a long time for an experience to kind of pass through my mind before it comes out with something else. There's a real strong example of that on this new record, because there's a song called Swanky Modes, and the lyrics are all about something that happened when I was living in Camden in London, right at the beginning of the 1990s. So that's nearly 30 years ago. And then for some reason, all this part of my life suddenly came into sharp focus, and I wrote a song about it. But why it took 30 years, I have no idea. That's a mystery of the cosmos,
Yeah. So I have a clarification question to ask first. So is it Jarvis or Jarv Is for the new band?
Jarv Is, because and it's very important that it's got 3 dots after. So it's Jarv Is. It could be anything. Jarv Is floating. Jarv Is purple. I don't know. Jarv Is beyond the pale, it says on this record. So that's the idea there. Yeah, I mean, the name came, at first I was going to call the band Jarv, which is just a shortened part of my name, but my manager thought that was much too smug, like it was like you were trying to be too familiar with people. So so I had to make a compromise and came up with Jarv Is. But in a way, even though I didn't think about it too much, the idea that it's got these three dots like an unfinished phrase kind of fits, because when we started playing, the music was unfinished, and you know, we finished it by playing it to people. So it's an ongoing thing, and I like that about it.
I'm a big fan of the ellipsis, so I'm right there with you on that. So you call the record Beyond the Pale, and I was reading an interview with you the other day, and I always assumed that that phrase just had to do with like skin, like losing the color of your skin, but there's a bigger story to what that phrase comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to an Irish journalist the other day, and he gave me a bit of background on it. Apparently, the phrase comes from when the British went and kind of invaded Ireland, and they controlled Dublin. They couldn't control the whole country, it was too big, but they had this part of Dublin, and then they built a fence around it, and that was called the Pale. And so the bit inside the fence, that was the safe part, and then beyond the Pale was like, oh, there's monsters out there. You know, they couldn't guarantee safety or whatever, but really that was the real, you know, that was the real country, and this bit was just like a kind of colonial, you know, they've just taken over that bit. So that's the idea of going beyond that kind of white colonial idea.
Yeah. Well, you know, in Baghdad, the U.S. had the Green Zone, which was the kind of the same thing, I guess, right?
Yeah,
This record, I love the call and response with the vocals on several of the songs. It's like you're sort of answering your own questions with the background vocals in a lot of the lyrics. Did that just sort of evolve because of this band, or is that something that you sort of wrote into those songs intentionally?
yeah, I mean, that's been a big treat for me on this record, because in Pulp, nobody else in the band sang. I mean, it's since transpired that a couple of them could sing, but they never put their hand up and volunteered. So it was all just me, ranting, you know, and just about everybody in the band now sings. But the main thing is that I've got the two women in the band, Serafina and Emma, are really good vocalists, and that's really opened it up, because now it's not like a monologue all the time. It's like a conversation, and like you say, sometimes they'll echo what I say, but sometimes they disagree with what I say, or they give another point of view.
Yeah.
And I just like that. You know, I think it really started, one of the first songs that we kind of finished working on was this song, Must I Evolve? And at the start there it goes, Must I Evolve? And they go, yes, 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 yes. Well, when I wrote the song, the yes, yes, yes bit didn't exist. And I think it was Serafina just started doing it in a rehearsal. And I thought that's a great idea. And so then that really sparked my imagination, the fact that we could build that into songs and give them another dimension. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of makes the song, I think, in particular that one, or it elevates the humor, and it kind of knocks it down a little bit at the same time. You know, it kind of humanizes the lyrics even more.
I agree with you. I think somebody the other day said it was like a Greek chorus, but I don't really know what that is. But I know that in old plays they used to have that. You know, there would be somebody who come on and comment on the action, and I like that aspect to it. There's sometimes, as you say, they may bring me down a peg or two if I'm getting ideas above my station.
I wanted to ask too, you're working on a book. This book is a song, which, hearing that title reminds me of the is it Magritte with the "This is not a pipe" sort of expression, but and I saw where you were saying that lyrics aren't always the important thing, but you're such a great short story writer. I mean, your lyrics are so wonderful. So I was wondering if you could expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I got asked if I wanted to write a book, and I think everybody would love to write a book. It's whether you are capable of it. And I often used to question that, because I've written songs all my life. And I've been a little bit spoiled there, because in a song, you can write 2 pages of words and that's it. And that's the end of the song. That's great. Songwriting is all about trying to tell the story in the least number of words possible. But a book obviously has to be, otherwise it would just be a pamphlet. If you applied the same thing, it would just be like a sheet of paper, and nobody's going to buy that. So that's been a challenge for me. So the reason I called it This Book Is a Song is really, the idea is that I'll write the words, and then the reader is kind of providing the music, and then eventually the combination of the two of us makes a song. It's a work in progress.
All right. Well, we'll be waiting for that down the road, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's getting close. As I say, I am a slow worker, but it's getting there. I think we're up to the middle eight, and so we've only got to kind of get through the middle eight, and then do the big chorus and the instrumental outro, and we're there.
Yeah, double chorus to the end, right? After that.
That's it. How can it be?
So it's just a repeat of chapter 3 is sort of the last chapter, right?
I don't think the publisher is going to let me get away.
So you said the North. I'd always wondered if Sheffield was. I don't know my English geography enough to know where the Midlands ends and the North begins, but Sheffield is sort of interior, in between like Newcastle and Manchester, right?
Yeah, I mean, I heard it said once that if you cut round a map of the UK and balanced it on a pin, you would put the pin underneath Sheffield. So really, it should be called the Midlands, but it's to the north of England, because you've got Scotland that's on the top, which obviously is quite a big bit. But yeah.
But the sense is that when you would have been coming of age in the 70s and into the 80s, it was a tough time for the north of England in particular. What was it like growing up there for you, and how do you think that has sort of continued to impact who you've become?
Yeah, it was pretty rough, you know. I came of age, you know, when 1980 happened, which I count as like year zero of when things went wrong. I was like 16 or 17. So I was just like getting ready to leave school and stuff like that. And I had, everybody's excited when you think, I want to get out into the world, and it's time for me to do my thing now. You know, you've read books, you've listened to songs, you've got these ideas about what life is, but you want to go out and actually live it and do it yourself.
Yeah.
And so I was really excited. And then suddenly the 80s happened. Margaret Thatcher was in power in the UK, and everything just went, you know, Sheffield especially, was being an industrial city, was really hard hit. All the factories closed down, the mining industry disappeared, everybody was out of work. So it was like suddenly you were thrust out into a dystopian kind of, you know, decayed post-industrial landscape. It was a shock. I'm sure it has informed me. I had to learn how to entertain myself. I had to survive on very little money, and I was in a band, and that was really the only thing that kept me going, I think, was having something that I thought, well, nobody can take this away from me. It was like Gollum with his precious, you know, this is mine. You know, the band was the thing that nobody could steal. Nobody wanted to steal it because nobody really liked us, but it was something for us to hold on to.
Well, I imagine, given your age, you're maybe 2 to 3 years older than me, that you would have been coming up just in that era between sort of glam and punk, having some early. Was that your early musical experience? Was that sort of right before punk hit? Was like as you were discovering rock and roll and stuff?
But punk was a really important thing for me, because that came when I was around 13, and I'd always wanted to be in a band, even, you know, from being like 8 years old. And but it was coming to the time where I thought, right, okay, now I should start a band. And I just didn't know how to do it. You know, I'd been to someone's house and I'd seen the Beatles songbook, and I'd looked at it and I wanted to cry, because it just had like, each song seemed to have like 25 chords. And I was thinking, how the hell am I going to do that? I can't do that. I hadn't studied music at school. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly punk came along, and there was that very famous thing on the Sniffing Glue fanzine where it said, here's one chord, here's another chord, here's another chord, now go and form a band. And suddenly that burden of musical ability or anything like that just disappeared. It was more about, you've got to have the right attitude. And that just came at exactly the right time for me, because I just thought, okay, it's fine. We don't need to play. In fact, it's an advantage not to be able to play. Let's just have attitude and do it. And that was the start.
Yeah, I have a friend who's Scottish who tells me about some of the bands that didn't happen here. You know, after Bowie and T-Rex and Sweet, then you had like mud and smoky and wizard and stuff like that, and how he was in that age, and then suddenly he found the Stranglers and the Clash and the Pistols, and it just opened up whole new vistas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Stranglers was the first single that I bought. Was a single by the Stranglers, and I went to see them. I had to go on my own. Nobody else at school would go, so I turned up, and it was the first time that I'd experienced moshing. So I was really naive. You know, I was maybe 14 years old, and I got there. The support band were on, and I thought, oh, great, nobody's watching them. So I just went right to the front of the stage. I've got the best view. This is amazing. And then, of course, when the Stranglers came on, all the rest of the crowd came, and suddenly I had that very frightening feeling where everybody's jumping up and down, and suddenly your feet leave the ground, and the only thing that's holding you up is other people. And I kind of freaked out and got out and went and watched the rest of it from the back of the room.
Yeah. I've been thinking about your song Running the World a lot. Every time I see a world leader, it comes into my mind nowadays.
Right.
It's a challenging song, not one we can play on the radio, at least in the States, but it seems to be like maybe you were pretty prescient in terms of what you were writing about 14 or 15 years ago.
Well, you know, that song keeps rearing its head, like you say. Like the last time it kind of bubbled up was just before Christmas here in the UK.
Yeah.
We had an election, and the Conservatives won, and a lot of people were really, really disgruntled about that. And there was actually a campaign to get that song to #1 in the singles chart, which, as you've said, given its lyrical content, it's not going to get a lot of airplay. So it was a noble attempt, and they did pretty well, you know. So, but it's been used. I've heard it sung at like Extinction Rebellion marches. I think back in Spain with this Indignados movement that happened like maybe 10 years ago. So I don't know. I'm flattered that people take it as an anthem of protest. It's also kind of sad that people still feel that they need to sing it because it seems appropriate for the people who are ruling over them.
Strangely, it seems more appropriate in some ways than maybe it was even when you first wrote it 14 years ago, given where we're at today.
Yeah, at the time it came out, it was Bush and Blair.
Yeah, yeah. And now it's Johnson and Trump.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Draw your own conclusions.
So I just saw there's been some updates with Brexit. How are people feeling today in the UK in terms of you've got COVID and Brexit, the double whammy coming down, don't you?
Well, I mean, I suppose it must be similar over there. You know, it's like stuff happens and then something else piles on top of that, and then something else piles on top of that. It's a weird time for that. It feels like an assault. It feels like everybody's got to tough it out. And I do think that, you know, I do try and look for the positive things in that. And I do think there have been things that people are kind of taking sides and they're standing up. They're not just passively taking things like that. Maybe has been more the case where people have been distracted a lot in the past. So yeah, it's like you don't get a chance to recover from one blow before somebody lands another one on you. But I guess we just got to get tough.
Well, that's sort of, that's sort of how it's been here. Absolutely. At the same time. And it really made me think about how prescient house music all night long is, because when I first heard the song, I thought, oh, it's about a guy, maybe he's coming down after he's sort of done with that culture, but he's still got that music. And then I was like, wait a minute, it's about being trapped in your house. How did you know that that's what we were going to be doing all through 2020, Jarvis?
Well, of course, I didn't know that, did I? But it was just a weird coincidence. You know, it was written about the thing that you said first. It was me imagining this guy kind of going frantic and stuck in the house while the object of his desire is out dancing to house. It's a very kind of simple idea, I suppose. But then it was weird. Right at the start of the lockdown, our violin player, Emma, one of her friends caught the virus and had to stay home for a long time, and said, you know, that song, I listened to that song a couple of times and it seemed to be really talking about what I was going through. So yeah, and then a lot of people pointed it out, but I don't know, it's a strange thing. When you write a song, you want it to chime with the times, but chime in with a global pandemic, maybe something to punch the air about, you know.
Yeah. I also realized that, like I said, you're 2 to 3 years ahead of me, and I have one son who's 14. You have a son who's 17,
17.
16, 17. So I feel like I should come to you for advice on what the next 3 years are going to be like. So how has teen parenting been for someone in your line of work?
Okay, I don't know. Is your son like into music and stuff?
He's into whatever music I'm into. He's probably into something else. So it's
Yeah,
a lot of video games and maybe like trap hip hop right now.
yeah. And does he play music as well?
A little bit. He can play a
Yeah,
pretty good drum kit. So yeah. How about
yeah.
yours?
Same as my son. My son took up the drums, and that I think that was smart of him in a way. I mean, he started playing drums when he was 6, and I just thought this is like one of those things. Like once he's made himself slightly deaf and annoyed me, he'll stop.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he stayed with it, and now he's a pretty good drummer. And I think that's something that I can't play. I mean, I think I did once attempt in a very early lineup of Pulp. There was one song where I played the drums, which was a disaster. But yeah, so he's kind of found his way into a bit of music that isn't my thing, and I think that's good. He has to do that. Like, he's not interested in singing at all, and I guess that's because that's my main thing. He wants to have his own area. So I think that's the thing. Just give him space. I think that's the thing you have to do. Give him a bit of space.
It's Jarvis Cocker. Thank you for having some time with us today, and good luck with the new record, Jarv Is. Now we know the title.
Yeah. Spread the word.
And I mean, is there any way at this point to even try to plan like gigs and tours, or are you, how are you reconfiguring your sort of world for that?
Well, that's what I'm doing. As soon as I've finished this conversation, actually, I'll be back. We're actually mixing some sound at the moment because a week ago today we did a concert in a cave, and we played the album in order, and we had lights and stuff. So we presented it like we were playing a concert. And what we're going to do with that is put that up on YouTube, and people will see it, because there's no way for us to go and actually play to people. So this is the best we can do. So that will be a free to view thing that people can go and see, and hopefully it won't be the same as a live concert, but it's the best that we can do. And it's something that we've been aching to do. Like a lot of bands, I suppose, when lockdown hit, we're trying to find ways to play live. And, like we had a Zoom conversation with the whole band, and we're going, oh, this is great. Yeah, let's start playing now. And then you suddenly realize that everybody's got different latency things going on. And it sounds like when you first were in a band and nobody could play in time together and all that stuff, So we gave up on that. We tried a few other things, but this is the best substitute that we've been able to find, but we want to go and play concerts as soon as is humanly possible.
Was it weird to do what probably felt like a concert, felt like a set with no one there to applaud?
Yeah, I suppose it helped because we were in an unusual setting. We were in this cavern, and it's a really beautiful place, actually. So that was an extra level of something. Then also, it was the first time that we'd been able to play together for 4 months. So just the kind of joy of playing together what kept us going. But I have to admit, when we got to the end of the song and there was just the sound just died away in the furthest corners of the cave, there wasn't even one. It was quite a weird thing.
Well, you seem like someone when I've seen you as a live performer, someone that really feeds off that energy. So it's got to feel more like a rehearsal than a gig, probably.
Yeah, but it did feel like something, I suppose, because there were cameras there, and I knew that this was our chance to try and get the songs across to an audience. So I was trying to keep that idea in my mind that I was addressing. So I do, for instance, I do talk between the songs. That's something that I've always done on stage. So I did that. I can't see what the audience is doing. Some people might just be laid in bed watching it. Hopefully some people might jump around. Some people might even construct their own cave to watch it in. I don't know. But I tried to talk to the audience in a similar way to the way that I do on stage.
Well, as you describe it, it kind of reminds me. Sigur Rós did a film about it was about 10 years ago, I think, when they came back to Iceland and they played a series of unconventional venues, and I think one was a cave. Actually, they had small audiences at them, but maybe that's the modern touring for 2020 is strange performance spaces and different acoustics or something.
Well, it could be. I mean, the acoustics of this cave are amazing. I mean, that was the thing. When I told our sound man we were going to play a concert in a cave, he kind of looked like he was going to have some kind of a heart attack or
Oh
something.
yeah, so, front of house guys love hearing that. We're gonna go to a cave.
But it actually sounds pretty amazing. It's
Yeah.
they have had shows there before. Queen Victoria famously went to this cavern and an orchestra played for her. They had to change the name of the cavern for her because its traditional name is the Devil's Arse, which is like the devil's ass, which wouldn't go over with the royal, obviously. So they had to change the name of it to Peak Cavern, which is much more genteel.
Yeah, it sounds lovely. Jarvis Cocker, thank you for being with us today. And I love the new record. It's a sort of a new sound for you, you know, sonically. I hear elements of krautrock. I hear bits of your sort of Leonard Cohen sing speak going on, and some great songs that who knew they would be so prophetic for 2020. And I look forward to seeing the video too.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. It's been good to talk. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jarvis. Nice to meet you too.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.